Welcome to Your Next Best Step with Breck Cochran, the locker room for purpose-driven leaders. This is where we slow down, reflect, and take our next best steps through real stories, practical strategies, and rooted leadership wisdom. Remember, the best leaders need a coach in their corner.
Well, welcome to Your Next Best Step podcast, the Leaders Locker Room, and glad to have you today. I'm here with my good friend, Thomas Asta, who is from Raleigh, Durham, the Triangle down in North Carolina, Wake Forest, and we'll talk a little bit about how we met, Tom. But man, welcome to the locker room, brother.
Man, I am excited. Not as excited as I'm going to be when I'm actually sitting there watching. Hopefully this year, Bills Eagles in the Super Bowl with you.
Man, wouldn't that be something?
That'd be great. But
we're
great
both
to be
struggling. That's going to be a stretch for us right now. For this past weekend, we got some work to do for our hometown teams. That is for sure. Tom, man, we met, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. We have a community of brothers, of like-hearted men in our lives who have become literally like brothers. I don't know, there's about 21, 22 in total that have been a part of what we call affectionately the Lions, right? And so we do this yearly trip that we go out west, and we've been doing it I think this was our 8th year to do it. We started going out to Wyoming, not Wyoming, but to Montana. We've been to Wyoming. We've been to Colorado. The thing I love, Tom, about it is, like, we're all busy, crazy. We have every excuse in the world not to go. But
True.
Yet, usually 16, 17 guys make it a priority, and we show up for each other. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. And it's been life-changing. And a couple of the years when I thought absolutely not are the years that were most impactful and most learning for me. Breck, including the first one. And I don't know if you remember, but one of the deepest connections I've had on that Lions trip is a conversation. We hardly knew each other, and it was in a van heading to tour Little Bighorn, where Custer's last stand. And
I remember that. That's right.
You were just asking me really insightful questions about my past and the way that I think and the way I process information. And it was a really incredible mentoring moment for me that I just have a ton of respect for you as a I want to say older brother, but I think that's a good term for us. As a person who's really gone before me, and I'm just really thankful for you. I think you're a great coach and a great leader.
Man, I so appreciate that. It was an interesting, Tom. If give us a little bit of story about who you are, family, and we got some, man. We're going to dig in. I think this episode is really going to help leaders. I'm really fascinated by what you're fascinated by, as a dad, as a husband, but also as a leadership coach. But give us a little background before we jump into that conversation.
So personally, I'm a father of 4. I have 3 daughters and a son. Husband to Cindy, who has been just, I can't say enough, my biggest partner, champion, cheerleader, and probably the person I've learned most from in my life has been Cindy. So over 25 years of marriage, that has shaped me. And our marriage has definitely shaped me professionally because of how much I've learned about communication and interaction. And what it takes to have a successful marriage is, she's absolutely the reason I have any success in my professional life. And that's not hyperbolic. It is very true. My kids have been also just man, just such an incredible learning experience and how to communicate with each one so differently. They have their own, almost their own unique language, their own, I guess, music, so to speak, that the way that they respond and the way they need to be spoken to and the way that they process information is fascinating. Even to our oldest joined our family last. She was adopted from Uganda. And you think, man, you throw one more girl in the mix of complexity of communication, and then you have the cross-cultural aspect of it. And it required me as a father to constantly be willing to flush my ego down the drain, rethink, retool, and that change in me of being a father of daughters, a father to a son who I think is one of the most incredible young men anyone would ever meet, and then being a husband to Cindy, it's changed me, and the byproduct benefit of that has been in my professional life. So in my professional life, I've been in the medical device space for over 20 years now, working in both sales and then leading teams with different companies, and then also being in education. So I've spent the past 15 years in the neurovascular space, treating aneurysms and ischemic stroke. I worked with Medtronic, a name a lot of people may know, one of the largest medical device companies in the world. I was a sales rep for them for about 5 years, and then led a Mid-Atlantic team for them for a 5-year period, and then moved over into the company I'm with now, where I'm a director of U.S. Training, and I'm also the territory sales manager for North and South Carolina. So still in the neurovascular space.
Yeah. Wow.
That's a quick background of the personal and professional.
Yeah. Tom, I haven't even asked you this, but a little bit about I know, we've had some pretty deep conversations about you growing up, and you got 4 kids, you got a son. How have you learned to be a dad when your experience with dad wasn't all that good, right? I mean, to say it, put it mildly.
Yeah, to put it mildly, in the background on that, my biological father was never in the picture, although he knew who I was, where I was. I have older half siblings that he was in contact with, so there was just never really an acknowledgement one way or the other. It was interesting to discover what that set up for me later in life, and some of the fears and worries I had. But then my mother was remarried multiple times, and so there was there was a lot of men in and out of the house, and that set up a pretty at times even violent background. And all throughout that, it was very, very clear to me from a young age, this is not the way it's supposed to be. I think for me personally, that was absolutely a God thing. There was no other explanation for it. I mean, if statistically on paper, I should not be a good dad or successful in business or a good friend or anything like that. And then I was really blessed with some incredible mentors along the way. One who probably shaped me more than anyone else when it comes to being a father and being a husband is a friend of mine that I just lost this past summer, Dr. Greg Brannon. And he's one of the finest individuals I've ever met, a huge influence on my life. And he was the father figure for me. And he was kind of the true north that God pointed me towards him to say, follow that. That helped a ton. And then again, I go back to Breck, marrying a strong / kind woman is an amazing gift, because there's so many times where she would say, rethink that,
Right.
repackage that. And so that learning process along the way was great. But yeah, then just a love for being a dad that God put in my heart. It's just
Yeah.
I think it's the greatest treasure in the world. And it's something I didn't have growing up. And
Yeah.
I love it.
I wanted you to share a little bit because with our listeners, because sometimes, I don't know, sometimes, so often we read the outside of a package. We see people, whether it's on Instagram, social media, we see them in our companies, our businesses, and we have these narratives, these stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, that and then also we tell stories about others almost to try uh to give validation to the little Breck or to the little Tom inside of us that's still trying to get
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah.
And so often when I hear, one of the things I've always loved about what I've done is I get to hear stories about people. I want to know the backstory. And so often I can't tell you, you'd think I would quit assuming, but I've gotten them better, but there's still sometimes I'll assume I know what's behind the package, and I'm so often I'm wrong, and I'm just like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And Tom, I know you're an amazing dad, husband. You care. We've had our Lions group, and I just want to share, for specifically men that are listening, if we can't do this life alone. You can't lead, you can't grow, you can't scale, you can't do anything that has any amount of significance without other men in our lives. You've shared several different men, your mentor, and we were together when you heard he passed, and we were
Yeah.
heartbroken for you this summer. And but this group of guys that we have, it's almost been a decade since we've been getting together. And so we've some of us have lost our parents. Some of us have moved from having young kids to high schoolers, and high schoolers now to graduated from college. And some of us are starting to have grandkids, and so to have this group of men in our lives, and we commit to each other. We could always have an excuse not to show up, but I love the fact that we have so many of us that because when one of us doesn't show up, somebody's missing the energy,
Yeah.
the conversation, the laughs, and I just encourage men, man. You don't have to go out west. You don't have to have a big trip, but um, I have what I brought some of that stuff back. I got a ring of fire right outside. I'm looking at it, and in this space here, I have guys come over all the time, and man, we just chop it up. We'll smoke a cigar. We'll watch, move sports. We'll watch something. We'll listen to music. It's so often, man, some of the most deepest, courageous conversations have come just around a fire pit.
Yeah. And right, I agree with you completely. And, one of the hobbies that I have, I've been really thankful for that shaped me a lot as an individual is I've been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a long time, and a black belt and a coach at a local gym here. And I think that that's a really good microcosm for what you're saying, because could you, in theory, read enough books, watch enough videos, chat GPT your way into learning jujitsu alone? Maybe. But where you learn is on the mat.
Mm.
Who do you learn with? The people that you trust, that shape each other and tap each other and guide each other, and then just sit around and shoot the shit together and laugh with each other. But being a part of that community is, man, it's absolutely crucial to how good your game becomes as a jiu-jitsu player. And I love the story, and it may be cliche at this point for a lot of us, especially in leadership, but the idea of the Spartan shield for the 300, the shield wasn't, you didn't hold it up for you. You held it up at a certain height and a certain way for the man to your left and your right.
Mm.
You know, and like, why do I have to be so focused on being a good leader and a good man and a good husband and a good father, man, so you can trust me to be at your right or your left?
Yeah, so
You know?
good.
Because if you're worried about, man, I don't know if this guy is on the up and up, then
Yeah,
you've got an exposure, right? And
yeah.
so being keeping a really high filter on who we walk with, but you
Mm.
don't walk alone. You don't walk alone. We can't do it.
So good. Tom, that's so good. Hey, man, I want us to talk a little bit about the world that you kind of live in.
Okay.
As when I was going through my master's program with the Townsend Institute, John Townsend and Henry Cloud, they've written so much about, the mind and the power of it. I mean, there's all kinds of studies out there, but one of the things that when we were going through our program, we talked a lot about the neuroscience, the way that we can reshape our brain, and we talked about it in the as coaching, and coaching with the mind in mind of the mind, right? And so when I started hearing you talk about, what you're doing, man, it was really intriguing. I would love for you to kind of unpack a little bit of what you do around this neuroscience, and just kind of set us up, kind of like how you got to this point, and then what it is that you're kind of what you present and what you teach around the country.
So, this really all started for me when I was asked to lead the team when I was at Medtronic. And so I went from being a peer to all of a sudden being the leader of my peers. And now some of this links back to what we had said, is that, that young Breck, that young Tom, I felt I felt that fear of, I don't deserve this position. I don't belong here. That imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
They're going to think I'm a fraud. And so, man, I worked hard. That first sales meeting,
Mm-hmm.
I put it all into the presentation.
Yeah.
And I was going to have a team motto that was outside of our company motto. And I gave them everything I could. And it went over like a lead balloon, Breck. It did not at all get received with this, this vigor and vim that I thought I put into it. And
Right.
in fact, a couple of the more vocal team members, spoke to me on the side and were like, whoa, like what, back off kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, how could that have gotten so misinterpreted? And it really made me start to think, if I want to be a better leader, what is the one thing that is going to move the needle most? And the reason I was asking that is because it's a very sales oriented thing. When you look at your quota,
Yeah.
and you look at the products that you have, you think, okay, what one account, what one product is going to move the needle most to me achieving quota? And that was always a very simple and effective strategy I would use in sales. And so I thought, with leadership, what's the one thing that I can do to become a more effective leader? Because this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Now, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that it's also a time in my marriage where there were all these instances happening where I would say something and the reaction that I was getting was not at all what I thought was going to be intended. And my wife would say things like, are you not hearing your tone? Did you think that I was going to respond well to that?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, man, how could I be so off? And so I really started trying to understand the why do I communicate the way I communicate? What is it? Let me break it down to the simplest common denominator, the lowest common denominator. And being in the brain with the medical devices we sold, I've always been fascinated by the neuroscience. And then we start reading about there are actual chemicals in the brain that are released when we communicate and when we interface with other people. And we could trigger those to be a positive situation, or we could trigger those, and most often do, to be an incredibly negative situation. Yeah.
Wow.
And when we, as you know, when we trigger the negative, we trigger the amygdala to either fight, flight, freeze, or we have a new one now, fawn.
Yeah.
If you just think of what we're, the three that we're probably most familiar with, the fight, flight, freeze, I realized, and this is analyzing my own, what was mine? Mine is fight. My hands go up and I'm fight. Now, it's very simple for us to say, well, my way is probably the bad way. There isn't a bad way. There's a very stoic way we should look at this. Whether you're a fight, a flight, or a freeze, that's not good or bad. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And so
that's good to know.
I started finding that the tone or the verbiage that I would use or the environment that I set up for my team, I could very easily trigger a freeze out of somebody.
Wow.
I could ask them a certain question and they would look at me and I'm thinking, and so, or I would trigger a fight or I would trigger a flee. We can see that absolutely happen in the lives of our kids, right? Probably our kids are all different, whether they're fight, flight, freeze. Certainly we can see it with our spouses. And so I started thinking, man, I need to really watch my words and my tone and be much more selective in the type of brain chemistry that I'm triggering and the way I'm communicating with people.
Wow.
What I've found.
That's incredible insight. One of the things that I often, when I'm coaching, one of the first questions I ask, and I'll keep saying it on the podcast because I've said this probably on almost every episode, but it's this question: are we curious? Are we to ask this courageous question? What's it like on the other side of me? ... Really? And I break it down in three ways. What's it look like? Sound like? Feel like? And if you aren't curious, if you don't want to ask that question, I already know something about you. You don't have your own best interest in mind or the people who are counting on you the most. And that's exactly, Tom, what you were like, as you're thinking through this, you're like, gosh, it must be different on the other side of me than what I'm thinking it is. Most people, most leaders, men and women, we don't even consider, we don't even think about that. So that's amazing, Tom, that you would have that curiosity to really like try to figure this thing out. So, man, just keep trucking on that. I love that.
Well, so then what I found when I start doing more research on it, we go to, the Harvard Business Review and so many books. And I mean, just an abundance of information is out there to tell you one of the biggest things that you can do to be successful as a leader is increase your emotional intelligence and communicate better.
Wow.
But interestingly enough, and being a part of training programs, it was always talked about that one of the least invested in aspects of training by companies on a regular basis and across multiple venues was emotional intelligence and communication. So we would teach technical skill, product knowledge. With leaders, we would say, bring us your forecast, give us your quarterly business reviews. Give us a top down on how your people are performing. Who's your best? Who's your least? Who's your high potentials? Who's your flight risks? But we were never talking about emotional intelligence and getting better at communication. But I'm seeing so many things saying, hey, that's going to move the needle most. Move the needle most means at the end of the day, revenue. So if we want more revenue, if we want to be better leaders, if we're better communicators, and we set up an environment where people are not only being communicated with in the way that helps them to break down their fight, flight, freeze response, they're going to build trust with us. And a culture of better communication, better trust, almost hands down is going to be better revenue. And so
that literally is the root work that makes the fruit work.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Brett.
That rootedness, that groundedness. And so often we spend most of our energy on the fruit. And man, if we would just spend a little more intentional, purposeful time on the human being side and not just the human doing side, man, it would be, I mean, all around the environments that we create, the culture, the team, all of that is just better than when the fruit is always kind of the main thing.
We talked about this before, Breck, but again, being a big Bills fan that you are, if we did the backyard play that we did growing up playing football, where we said, everybody, okay, here's you, here's me, everybody go deep, everybody get open, and we said we're going to wing it, and we tried that against the Buffalo Bills, or if any team tried that against the Buffalo Bills, you get crushed. It would be ridiculous to think we're just going to wing it.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't do that really in any professional setting. But the one area that impacts us most in business, in our marriages, and as parents, communication.
Yeah.
Almost all of us are just winging it. We're not sitting there doing the analysis that it takes. And so we're thinking, in one of the most important aspects of my life, I'm just going to wing it. I wouldn't do that with my finances. I don't do that with my health. I don't do it with my workouts. But for some reason, people are comfortable doing that with communication. And yet it's the one that pays us the highest dividends. And I've found, Breck, it could be as simple as, we're both wearing glasses right now. If I was willing to say, Breck, let me put yours on for a minute. You put mine on for a minute. I just want to see what the world looks like through your eyes. That's the essence of empathy.
Yeah.
Right. And I especially as a leader, I think I misdefined empathy for too long, thinking that empathy was seeing the way you see the world and agreeing with you. And that's not.
Right.
That's more of sympathy.
Yeah.
Right. I don't need to agree with you. I just need to understand, how are you seeing the world, so that I can look down at the problem, whether it's how close you are to hitting quota, or with one of my kids struggling with one of their classes in school, or with a relationship with friends. I have to always first say, hey, it's not about how I see this. Give me your lens. How do you see it? And in a leadership setting, there has been so many times where I put someone's glasses on and I go, oh, here, you just had a little smudge, but I never would have known that if I didn't stop and look through life through your eyes. And, you said before, we try to make judgment calls on the shell. And, at the end of the day, as leaders, you know what we know, Breck? Every single person we lead, they've got a family member dying of cancer. They got struggles in their marriage.
Yeah.
They're fighting with their neighbor. They got a bill that's coming due that's bugging them, or some. People are walking around with so much stress on their shoulders, and then
trauma, hurt, frustration.
And all of that is a chemical response in our body, right?
Yeah.
And so cortisol levels go up and affect the way that we process information, and already has us to that, so close to that fight, flight, freeze response. And so if we break down into the chemical side of things, that cortisol levels go way up and affect already the way we see the world and communicate. And then something that I found that's fascinating, we are in an unprecedented time of human history. And it has very much to do with this. And I don't want to do the the typical, phones and social media are bad kind of thing. It's not. But be stoic about it again. It's not good or bad. It just is what it is. The brain, the two main chemicals that I talk about are dopamine and oxytocin, and trying to find the balances of those two. One of the simplest ways I've heard it said is, if you think about a campfire, your fire pit, dopamine is the lighter fluid. Oxytocin is the log. If you try to light the fire with just the log, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
But if you just sit there and spray lighter fluid, it's, big bursts, die down quickly. So our brains are designed to have this balance of oxytocin, all right, to give us that long burn, but then those dopamine hits that help us along the way.
Yeah.
This whole design is based off of a dopamine addiction feedback loop. And now we're lucky enough to know some pretty amazing musicians in our life, right?
Right.
And a feedback loop for a musician would be horrible.
Yeah.
Because the microphone is picking up the sound from the PA, and it's putting it in, and it's putting it through the system, and it's amplifying it, and it's getting hurt. And that feedback loop that happens, something has to interrupt that, pull it away from the PA or shut down the system. Something needs to interrupt that feedback loop. We are in a time in human history in which almost every single person that you come across, man, woman, child, CEO, kindergarten teacher, grocery store clerk, anybody, is in the middle of a dopamine feedback loop that has never been witnessed before.
Yeah. Wow.
And
it's crazy.
We can say, well, I'm not really as addicted as somebody. We all are. Me too. I'm included in it. One of the things I do when I give this talk is I tell people, if you don't think that you're in a dopamine feedback loop, watch next time you pick up your phone. Your brain has a locked in way of when you scroll, which apps you check, how long you stay on each app, and you go from one app and then you close it down and you go next one, you close it down, you go next one. And that's how you check your phone. It's locked in. So with all of that said, if we think the majority of the people we're leading, the majority of the people we're talking to, coming across at the grocery store and in our own families, high cortisol levels, dopamine feedback loops, and low oxytocin. And that sets up something that I teach that I call the haunted house theory.
Okay.
Breck, if we're getting around to that time of year, if I were to take you into a haunted house, okay?
Yep.
What are some of the things that they would do in a haunted house that would enhance the experience a little bit for you? What's some of the simple things they would do?
Make it dark. They would make it, smoky, foggy. They would have, music that's eerie. They would have, people jumping out at you. It'd be, the floors would be uneven, all kinds of little goodies, things hanging down that you don't see that touch your face.
Absolutely. And all of those small little micro triggers, they're not real.
Yes.
They're not real. But if
tell
you trigger
tell
enough,
my oldest son that he's 26. He's 6'2", 225 pounds, and he told me last night that they're going to the haunted house in Nashville, and he goes, Dad, I don't do well those haunted houses. I said, I know it, buddy. I did something to trigger you back in the day.
You get those haunted houses, they know they make hallways smaller. They, like you said, they change the lights. They try to, like you're watching a movie and somebody gets in a helicopter and starts the helicopter and they flick all those switches.
Yes.
All those switches, all those triggers of your system are fired up so that at the end of the experience, you hear a hair dryer and you think it's a chainsaw and somebody freaks, and you freak out.
Yeah.
You go, what's the matter, Breck? It's just a hair dryer. And you go, yeah, under normal circumstances, it's a hair dryer. But with everything firing and everything triggered, It sounds like a chainsaw. What does that have to do with business? This is what it has to do with business.
Okay.
Hey, Breck, why didn't you get your expense reports in on time? And the email I get back from you is like, and I'm like, whoa, man, all I did was ask you about your expense report.
Mm.
And I started seeing that out of people. I started seeing a haunted house response
Wow.
to a simple question.
Wow.
And I thought, wait. These things aren't adding up. Or I would ask my wife a certain question and I would get a haunted house response.
Mm.
And I thought, Tom, what's going on? 2 of the kids are sick. She hasn't slept in days. I've been gone on a business trip. Dog just went to the bathroom on the floor.
Yeah.
I just asked the wrong question in the wrong way at the wrong time. And I've definitely found that analyzing how many of the people that are on the teams that we lead are going through life in the middle of a haunted house. And if we could just turn the lights on, help them turn off the fog machine, help them control, and we can't do it, we can't control everything in their life. But if we can try to control some of the controllables, and certainly the ones for me, I mean, look, half the things in their haunted house could be time of day I emailed them as a manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I found, Breck, was one of them that really surprised me? Emailing people on a Sunday to let them know, hey, I don't need a response from you. I'm just letting you know about some great things coming up in the week. I was trying to do it to impress them, to show them, hey, your manager's out there working for you. They took that as, thanks for just wrecking my Sunday.
Right.
That's the easiest thing for me to fix. It was timing, send Monday morning, 8 a.m., So I know that was a lot in talking about the brain chemistry kind of things, but those are the thoughts that I started having for myself. And then it led to Medtronic as a company said, hey, we want you to present this at the next leadership meeting. And so that was really the first foray I had into this, is starting to teach people, hey, do you know there's a chemical reason why we think the way we think and why we communicate the way we communicate? And a couple of little tiny adjustments and tweaks, tuning the guitar.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the littlest thing. All of a sudden you can start really playing into harmony with each other and things go a lot smoother.
Man, that's Tom, that's so fascinating. One of the things, my kind of what statement has been for years is kind of my I have a why, and then I think it's important to have a why, but if you don't have a what to support the why just kind of stays on the wall, never gets down the hall. And so I think it's important for us to have a why organizationally. I think it's important to have a why personally, right? And then I think we have to put a little more work and do a what statement. And then to really get it down into every space, you got to do a how, a why, a what, and a how. And the what has been for me. So I create environments and experiences now for leaders. I create environments and experiences that help leaders take their next best step. And one of the things that I think when you talk about, like when I pastored for many years, and that was what I did then was, hey, let's create environments and experiences that allow people to take their next best step and to relationships with God and with each other. And so that helped like, okay, what are we doing here? But it's so important. We don't think too much about, like most people, they're like, hey, I love the experience, and to the neglect of the environment. And some people are like, I'm all about the environment, but they're not so in tune to the experience. And when you have both of those, when you go to a restaurant and the space, the environment is incredible, And then the experience is a 10 out of 10, right? You tell people about that. You're going to go back to that, right? And so, but if you have a great environment in a restaurant, we've walked into restaurants like, man, this is cool, but the service sucked, the food was mediocre. Like, it doesn't matter how nice of a place you're not going back. But what I also found is, if I go into a hole in the wall Mexican food joint and the food is great and the service is great, I'm willing to come back in. And
100%.
I think for us as leaders, talking about not winging it, we have to be purposeful, and we have to be intentional about the kind of environment and experience we are creating for the people who we're leading and that we're leading with. And Henry Cloud says we're 100% responsible for ourselves and how we're creating things and what we're allowing in those spaces. I love the fact, Tom, that what you're talking about really helps us, and to like how do you create a great environment? How do you create a great experience? Right? And just thinking about how we communicate, when we communicate, man, that is gold, brother.
I appreciate it. And there's so much. I mean, I've found it's just, and there's an endless supply of information in the thought process. But the first thing is what you had said earlier, is just being willing to ask a question, which is, how do I communicate?
Yeah.
Am I being interpreted? What is it like experiencing me?
Mm.
And, for my kids, what's it like experiencing me as a dad?
Oh, wow.
Am I being experienced the right way? What's it like experiencing me as a husband? What's it like experiencing me as a manager? And then the big one, hey, what's it like experiencing me as a vendor? And, in my world, I deal with complex, tip of the spear, dual trained endovascular neurosurgeons and interventional neuroradiologists. And there's so many times, Breck, I want to pick up that phone and say, hey, you got anything for me this week? Hey, the sale didn't go through. Hey, what do you think of this product? And I stop and think, I wonder if they got called in last night at 2:00 in the morning because someone had, a massive craniectomy in which they did brain surgery all night. Oh, and on top of it, their kids are late for soccer and their husband is also getting on their case because they're a normal person too. And then they get my sales texts saying, hey, what do you think of my product ABC? And you're like, man, I want to make sure that my customers are experiencing me in a way where they say, that person brings value, that person understands and has empathy to the world that I'm living in. Because I want my customers to speak well of me, like you said at that restaurant. I want my customers to brag about me to other potential customers. I want the people that I lead to go out to other people at other companies and say, do you know why you need to come to this company? And I'll tell you why. It's it's the 401k, and it's our equity package. But I'll tell you what, our leadership team will bring out the best in you. You'll get to the next level of your career if you come on to our team. That's the kind of team that doesn't need a recruiting company, because people are going out of their way because you're building a destination sales force.
Yeah.
I want to see my wife flourish in ways where people just can't understand well, you're not the same person you were last year. What is it? And I want to know that she's just flourishing in her confidence. And then we want to see that for our kids, right? It's always said a dad's the one person that wants to see you more successful than them in every area of your life. And it's like, I want that for my kids. Sure. I want to see them flourish. I don't want to be the thing that holds them back or crushes their confidence. So from all areas of business, leadership, home, community, this idea of, is it worth it putting my ego up on the scale and putting my communication style up on the chopping block? Absolutely. It's not even close. The ROI is beautiful.
Yeah. Man, that's so good, Tom. as we kind of wrap up, what would be a couple of like when you do these workshops, do you have like a call to action, or what's the, like there's a lot, like how would a leader, what would be their next best step for them in real practical ways to begin to rethink, instead of winging their communication, but thinking about how can I be more purposeful in this area?
I think you just said the most important thing is for them to stop and be willing to ask. I think the next step after being willing to ask is, and this is a plug for what you're doing right now, get with a coach. I mean, get with a coach who's willing to help you analyze your communication style.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to be a student of the game because you say, hey, look, brain chemistry doesn't interest me, then work with somebody who does. And remember, the greatest athletes in the world have a coach. The greatest fighters in the world, they have a corner man. And every 3 to 5 minutes, they go back in and say, hey, Breck, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
The greatest golfers have a caddy. People have a financial guru that they work with. Why someone would be in leadership and not be willing to work with a coach, it's a huge miss. And it usually comes down to, I'm good. Yeah. I've got it. I've figured it out. I'm as good as I'm going to get. No, you're not. Yeah. You could be so much better. And if you're better, then the natural emanation of that, because we're evangelistic by nature, right? The things, look behind you, Breck. I can't help but know that you love the Bills, baby. You love them, right? You couldn't keep it in if you tried, right?
Yeah.
And so as we start to flourish in the ways that we communicate and we become better leaders, the natural emanation of that is we become better in our family, in our neighborhood, in our community, in our company, in our city. And that really is the way that massive change starts to happen. So I would say, step 1, ask the question. Step 2, get a coach.
That's good. Hey, a couple of quick questions. What's a belief about leadership you used to hold, but now you've changed your mind? You've maybe outgrown it, or you've had a different experience. You used to think this way as a leader. Now you think differently as a leader.
If someone was in leadership above me, they absolutely knew what they were doing, and they were probably smarter than me.
Yes.
And I made that assumption a lot of, man, they're in leadership for a reason. Right. They know what they're doing. And you realize, man, don't put that on them. They may not.
Yeah.
They may be trying to figure it out too. And that doesn't mean bring them down a notch. What it means is the empathy that I have to have for the people I'm leading, I need to have that same empathy for the people leading me.
That's good.
Love that. They're going through a hard time. Maybe they don't have it figured out. Maybe they need someone to come help them find some solutions.
Yeah. I think, Tom, too, empathy is best served with a warm heart versus a cold heart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's hard. For sure.
Empathy, it's hard to have empathy if you're cold-hearted. Empathy, I think, because there's emotion to it. You're warm-hearted. You're being curious, and you don't have to agree, but you're warm-hearted toward what they're going through, right?
Yeah.
What's one failure? I don't know if you've ever had a failure. Maybe it's in, I don't know what that could be, but what's one failure that ended up reshaping you for the better? Like, it seemed like a failure in the moment, but now when you look back, you're like, man, I'm so glad I lost. I'm glad that I failed, or that didn't work out, because I've learned so much from that. What would be one for you?
I think, to do the callback to what we first started talking about, it was probably that first meeting. That first meeting that I had going from a peer to a manager, half the people in that room probably wouldn't count it as a failure, but I knew it was. And the things that I learned were obviously the things about communication. But you know what else I learned is that I suffered from imposter syndrome, and I didn't think that I deserved a seat at the table, and so I tried to over impress.
Yeah.
And I was doing things a lot for, man, I'm making sure Breck's giving me that feedback I need because I need it. Man, putting that need on somebody else is so destructive. And when I freed myself up from that imposter syndrome and said, hey, you see it a lot with jujitsu, you know, hey, you got the belt. It wasn't a free gift.
Yeah.
Now act like, it's like you want to have imposter syndrome, get a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You'll get humble real quick because there's some just amazing people out there and you think, I certainly don't deserve this. And you go, no, you do deserve it. You earned it. Now act like it.
Yeah.
And do the things that are required from you. So I think that was a big failure. And then a big life lesson that I learned, Breck, this was a game changer for me. This could be very obvious to a lot of people, but Breck, I spent a lot of my life thinking that the term perfectionist was a compliment. It was something I strived for. I thought, man, if I could only be a perfectionist because they get it all done and they're great. And, blah, 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 blah. And then I had a life coach, a counselor, tell me, he's like, you're struggling with perfectionism. And I was like, oh yeah, I wish. that would be great if I could be oh no. Wow. Really? And when he broke down for me what it was, I was like, oh no. And redefining perfectionism that wasn't a gift. That was a hindrance to me. It kept me from empathy for sure. Yeah. And it certainly got in my way of being the next best version of myself because I was never enough. And mostly I wasn't enough for me. Yeah. So, I hope that answers that question. But those are some big life lessons that I learned along the way in leadership.
Those are great, Tom. If last thing, for a leader that's out there, what's just one leadership nugget that you could pass to us that that would move the needle, help maybe in their communication or the imposter. But there's a lot of stuff that us leaders like. There's so many things. What's one leadership lesson you could leave with us as we close out today?
One of the leadership lessons I've and this is something that I do during my seminars when we talk is I put up a phrase on the PowerPoint, up on the board. And I ask people to read it in the worst possible context. Okay. And I'll go ahead and give it to you. I'll give you the freebie phrase because I learned it from someone else. So the phrase is, you're not going to believe this. She's wearing my wedding dress. And someone from the audience will say, oh, I'll go. And I can make it good. Come on, really act it up. And they'll go, you're not going to believe this. She's wearing my wedding dress. And I'll say, all right, that's good, but I need someone else to do it even better. And someone will, they'll outdo each other on snarkiness. And it gets pretty fun, right?
Right.
And then at the bottom, I let people know that's the mother of the bride writing a text to the father of the bride. Now read that text. And people go, oh, come on. And they say, you're not going to believe this. Oh, she's wearing my wedding dress.
Yeah.
And I said, now, every text you write and every text you read, remember that. Most of the texts and emails that you're writing are going to be read in the worst possible context. Most of the ones you read, try to get a little perspective before you judge. Yeah. Because there's probably something else going on there. And I'll tell you, that one little exercise really changes the way that people do written communication and the way they write it and the way that they read it. So I think it goes back to what you were saying before. Have a warm heart, have empathy, try to gain a little perspective. I forget the exact phrase that you used, but there's a lot more going on behind the surface than people think.
Yeah. Tom, man, that was awesome. Thanks for coming in, hanging out with us in the locker room today.
Yeah.
and so appreciate it. Hey, if this helped you or made you think a little different about something, man, pass this on, share it with a friend, subscribe to the podcast, give us a thumbs up, and man, we would appreciate it. And so until next time we meet, hey, I hope that you create great environments, great experiences, and remember what it's like on the other side of you, right? And how we communicate to each other. So blessings to you.
Thanks, Breck.